Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk about some rich men, some very, very rich men. They're all billionaires, 7 of them. 3 of them are newspaper proprietors, and 4 of them are just businessmen. But the thing they all have in common is that they were all in favour of Brexit. They all thought it was a good idea for us to leave the EU. I suspect that their reasons for wanting to leave the EU are probably to do with their own financial status, standing, and tax affairs, much more than they were concerned about the livelihoods and standard of living of ordinary peasants like us. We are, after all, living in some sort of 21st century feudal system where you have all these lords who are immensely rich, immensely powerful, and constantly getting richer and richer at an extraordinary rate, whereas the rest of us are all struggling. And this applies all over the world, more or less. So anyway, there are these 7 guys I'm going to talk about. They're all men. 3 of them newspaper proprietors, 4 of them are businessmen, 6 of them are self-made and obviously very clever, and 1 of them inherited everything. So let me begin with the newspapers. The biggest and the most powerful by far is Rupert Murdoch. Now, Murdoch has just retired, actually, at the age of 92, but he began in Australia when his father died when he was, I think, age 21, and he inherited the newspaper in Adelaide. And on the back of that newspaper, he built an empire all over Australia of newspapers. He was very, very successful. He then came to the UK in the 60s, and he bought the News of the World. And a year or 2 later, he started The Sun, both newspapers which were very down market. And Murdoch, I think, has some sort of rather brilliant knack of being able to spot what people want to see. So both the News of the World and the Sun were very much based on sex and scandal and celebrity and sport. And you probably remember the page 3 in the Sun. Anyway, both newspapers were extremely successful. Later on, he got to know Thatcher and so on, and after a lot of argy-bargy, eventually managed to buy the Times and the Sunday Times. So he became the most powerful newspaper baron in the UK. Had terrific influence, and prime ministers have always needed to seek out his support because what he writes in his newspapers has terrific influence. In due course, he went off to America, which is where he now lives. He's become an American citizen, where he bought other newspapers and also started Fox News, which is again a very right-wing, down-market channel, which is forever involved in scandal, but has been immensely successful. And so, as I say, prime ministers are always concerned to get Murdoch's backing, and whenever he comes to the UK, I think he goes to Downing Street, expects to be seen, and prime ministers are in his hands. It does seem extraordinary somehow that somebody who lives abroad, is based abroad, pays tax abroad, should have such influence over such a big part of our press. It seems wrong to me. I don't know why there isn't legislation whereby there's a limit to how much you can own of a newspaper unless you're a taxpayer in this country, but there doesn't seem to be, and so several of our newspapers are owned by businesses which are based abroad. So anyway, the second newspaper proprietor I want to talk about is Lord Rothermere. Now, he inherited everything from his father, and what he did inherit was the Daily Mail. And in due course, they started the Metro, so he now owns the Metro, which is the biggest circulation newspaper in the UK, and he owns the Daily Mail, which is the second biggest in the UK. And I mean, it's worth mentioning that newspapers, all circulations are falling at the moment because of competition from online and so on, but they're based online as well anyhow. But clearly the Mail and the Metro are very, very successful. Lord Rothermere, he's not based in this country for tax purposes. He's a non-dom, which means he pays like Sunak's wife. He pays just £30,000 a year or whatever it is, and tax on his worldwide income, well, that's which all comes from this country, is all paid in France or wherever. The Daily Mail and the Metro are owned by various companies in tax havens, and they don't pay any tax in this country either. Again, it seems extraordinary that something so influential as the Daily Mail and the Metro should should trade in this country and not be taxed here. The third newspaper proprietor is the remaining Barclay brother, Frederick Barclay. Now they've actually just sold or in the process of selling the Telegraph, but the Barclays have owned the Telegraph for some time. They, in order to avoid tax, and they admitted it, they went off to live in the Channel Islands, and they built a great big castle on some little island over there. He didn't sound like a very nice person. I mean, they're all scrapping this Barclay lot. The sons of or the children of David Barclay are scrapping with Frederick, and it all sounds all very, very, very messy. Frederick Barclay was married to a lady, I think she was a Japanese lady originally, for 34 years. She divorced him. She got a settlement. She went to court and got 100 million. But her daughter, who sided with the father, Frederick Barclay, transferred all his assets to the daughter. Said, I'm not your money, so he couldn't pay. And I think this is still, I know this is going through a court, I'm not sure. There was some suggestion he might even end up in prison if he wasn't careful. But it's again, it's this greed. It's just mindless greed. I mean, if you've got all that money, I mean, just yeah. But anyway, so those are our three newspaper proprietors, all based abroad, and yet having such a huge influence in this country. As I say, it seems to me absolutely crazy. Now, as far as the four businessmen who are all pro-Brexit, I wanted to start with Jim Ratcliffe. He was, until a couple of years ago, he was the richest man in the UK. I think he's worth about 30 billion, and he's made it all himself. He comes from fairly humble origins, and he went into work in various chemical companies, BP, I think, and then he started his own company, a company called Ineos, and he still owns 60% of it, but it's been enormously successful, a huge multinational company. And he went off to live in Monaco because he didn't want to pay tax in this country. It was reckoned that he'd save 4 billion a year in tax or something, or 4 billion, I don't know whether it's in a year or in total, by going to live in Monaco. Anyway, to save tax, he went off to live in Monaco. This is a guy who in 2019 he announced that he was going to build an electric car in South Wales. A couple of years later, I think he probably realised that it was not a very good idea. It wasn't going to be competitive if he was building in the UK because there are lots of problems unless the batteries are made here. Lots of problems with exporting cars from the UK to the EU. And so he decided to move production to France, and so that electric car is being made in France. He's opening a second factory in Austria. So he's kind of gone. He's kind of out of it. It's a multinational company anyway, but he's a hugely successful businessman. And he said when it came to Brexit, he said we should leave because he said we don't need people in Europe telling us how to manage our country. The second person I wanted to mention is Anthony Bamford. He's the guy whose family business is JCB, started by his father, and he's great friends with Johnson and his wife, Boris and Carrie. And he's the biggest private donor, I think, for 10 years to the Tory party, gave £10 million. When it came to Johnson's reception, it was at the time when he'd resigned, but he wanted to use checkers and he couldn't, and so Bamford paid for his wedding reception at one of his big houses. This guy, he was proposed for the House of Lords back in 2010. But he had to excuse himself because at the time HMRC were investigating his tax affairs. But as it happens, he's currently under investigation again by HMRC for his tax affairs. You can't imagine they're investigating if there isn't something to investigate. And you just wonder why people are so wealthy. This guy's worth 6 billion. Why do you pay the tax? Third one is a man who's almost as smug as Rees-Mogg. I think they could have a smugness competition, and it would be tough call. And that is the man who makes the Hoovers, James Dyson, worth 23 billion. Now he chops and changes a bit, and I think all he ever thinks about is himself and his own personal benefit. And in 1998, before the euro was introduced, he said we should definitely join. He was very, very keen we should join. He gave lots of interviews and so on about how important it was that we should join the euro. He said it was suicidal for the UK not to join the euro. But we didn't join, and in 2003 he moved his production to Singapore from the UK, and then he became a Brexiteer. He was very, very keen to leave the EU. He said Brexit would liberate our economy, enable us to strike trade deals around the world. He was already selling the majority of his products around the world anyway. And he said uncertainty is an opportunity, and he wanted to leave to avoid being dominated and bullied by Germans. I think the EU had brought in some sort of regulation about limiting the maximum power of a vacuum cleaner motor or something. But anyway, he obviously had a bit of a beef about it. And he said he was in favour of a no deal. He said we should just walk away and they will come to us. Not too sure about that, Jim. And to give you an idea of sort of guy he is, when COVID happened, he was asked if he could make ventilators, could he make them in the UK, and it meant bringing some people back from his factory in Singapore, and he personally emailed Johnson to say, could Johnson make sure they wouldn't have to pay extra tax, the workers coming back, to make these ventilators. Johnson replied saying, I will fix it. It was a bit of a scandal at the time. As I say, this guy is so wealthy and so pompous and so pleased with himself. But I'm a Brexiteer. The fourth and final one is little Bernie Ecclestone. You probably saw he was in court last week or week before. Excuse me. He, I'm not sure he's the brightest, but he's worth 2.9 billion. He, as we all know, he sort of ran Formula One, and that's where his fortune comes from. He's immensely rich, and I think he intends. He was asked by an interviewer some time ago that, what was he going to, who was he going to leave his money to? This 2.9 billion. He said no, he wasn't going to leave it to anybody. He was going to spend it all. And spend he does. You know, he's got a private plane, for £70 million private plane. He's got 2 enormous yachts. He's got a huge house in Switzerland, no doubt a lot of others. He's got 4 children. Eldest is 69 and the youngest is 4 years old. His 2 middle daughters, one lives in Millionaires Row in London, a house that cost 70 million apparently, and his other daughter has just sold a house in Los Angeles for 95 million. So I mean, he's got plenty of money. So anyway, he lied to HMRC about some assets, about £400 million worth of assets which he hadn't declared, and easy to do. I mean, anybody could do that, but he didn't tell them about it. A bit like Nadim Zahawi, you know, he just forgot or didn't realise that he had to tell them HMRC about 3.5 million in tax which he hadn't declared. So yes, Bernie was accused of hiding this money, and instead of fighting the case, he went to court and he fessed up. He said, "Yes, I'm guilty. I haven't done it." And so this is I think he was made to pay 530 million, more than £500 million he was made to pay. And that wasn't really. He was given a prison sentence, but it was suspended because it wasn't really serious enough to send him to prison. Because, I mean, if he'd gone to prison, you know, he could have found himself sharing a cell with somebody who was in for not paying the TV license, or somebody else who might be a Just Stop Oil protester. You know, he couldn't have that happen to an old man like him. So he left court, and no doubt he got on his private plane and went off to one of his big yachts in the Caribbean, perhaps, and he's probably sailing around, bumping into Michel Mon, who knows. But again, not a very nice man. And I think, as I said at the beginning, these people who become very rich, because they were so rich, everybody wants their opinion about everything, and they get very greedy. I think they get above themselves, and they seem to be they seem to give priority to avoiding tax, and they seem to have the ability to do so because they can afford the very best lawyers and so on. And it all seems wrong, but it just perpetuates this continuing division between very, very rich few and all the rest of us. It's really not good. And it seems that if you are that rich, you can bend the law, you can break the law, bend the law, and you can do what you like because you're rich, because politicians and authorities are all intimidated a bit by the fact that you're so rich. It's not good. It's not good. Anyway, that's what I think about it. If you watch this far, and if you haven't already subscribed, I'd really be grateful if you would do so, or if you know somebody who might be interested in what I've got to say. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.